For the record, Michael Weinberg,
I'm here.
Susan Drew, Sam Schroyer is here, Don Robertson,
Present.
Makoto Lane,
Present.
Lori,
Yep.
and myself here. Thanks for making time to come visit with us, Jordan. I appreciate that.
No problem.
You want to kind of be here for the discussion about the parks opening, is that right? Or park status?
Sure.
Just
I could
give us an update, and then Jordan has to kind of sign back off at 7:30. So if we could give him an opportunity to update us, that'd be great.
Is that right?
Okay. Is there any other public on the phone? Can you tell, Sarah? Is there any public comment?
I have nobody in attendees right now, so no.
Okay. Okay. And we'll do the meeting minutes later because, so Jordan, we can make use, best use of Jordan's time if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Okay. All right, well, go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, well, thanks. So the big question is parks opening, is that right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you've been reading the papers and following the news and looking at the Oregon Health Authority's website and the governor's website, there's probably some confusion, but I think over the last 5 or 6 days, more clarity since the governor's plan was unveiled and rolled out. Initially, there was confusion about how does this phasing work and what really is opening automatically on May 15th. Can you guys see me? Okay. And so we did get guidance last week about outdoor recreation being can open under certain requirements. So right now we have all our parks closed, except for Sandy River Trail and Garden. But it's likely that we can start reopening our parks and really change our signage around to keep our playgrounds closed. That will still be required to be closed, but parks and open spaces and stuff can, as long as you don't have contact sports. The challenge for us too will be back. Cleaning bathrooms twice a day and things like that, which I think is just a lot of resources. So that's some good news as we start to reopen. It's not tied to any of the phasing plans where, how that works now is that the counties apply to the state to reopen in phases, with phase 1 allowing some more personal services, bars and restaurants to open under certain requirements and restrictions. And then after about 21 days, I think they can, if they're showing decreases in cases and some other metrics, you can apply for phase 2, which, opens things up even more. The governor also renewed the ban on gatherings. And right now, no gatherings over 10 are allowed. And with phase 1, it'd be 25. And that includes, no events and festivals and celebrations. So we're not planning on holding any events this summer. That's pretty much, until September. We'll probably have a wait and see if anything changes as we get close to that date. Today we heard that Hood to Coast is canceled. So we won't have that running through town this year. Yeah, I mean, I think the next impact to us, or the next leap for us in this, is we'll get word from the county when they submit their application, and that right now is planned for the 22nd. So not next Friday, but the following Friday, or not this Friday, but the following Friday. Clackamas County plans to submit their application, which would put, I think it's about a week for the state to review their plan for opening up for phase 1. But in the meantime, we're continuing to work on our reopening plans for our facilities. City Hall would be the first. Other facilities such as the library and the senior center will be in the future phase. And we may not open City Hall right at phase 1. We got to make sure that we have the things that we have in place to meet the requirements, that our employees are protected. We have the signage and the decals and the barriers up. but I can see us moving towards, updating our signage and communicating about parks being open with phase one, if not sooner. So that's kind of where we're at with parks. And like I said, I don't think we'll probably have the capability to do like a full bathrooms and meet those requirements. And we still can't allow, parties or rentals and, our shelters. And of course we won't have the splash pad on, those are restricted. The skate park can under certain, guidelines. The more you open up and the more you allow, the problem gets into reinforcement and who does that. And, right now we're basically responding to, complaint based. So if someone does complain and want us to send cops out there to kind of educate them, we haven't cited anybody, but we have, talked to a few folks that maybe had a little bit too big of a gathering. So yeah, any questions? I'm sure you have questions about COVID.
It all sounds too familiar to me.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
But
You have an expert.
any problems at any of the parks? Or people gathering anywhere or anything?
Yeah. We've gotten calls about gathering and people showing up at parks. And we, like I said, we've taken a very more education approach. And by the time, a lot of times, by the time the cops get there about somebody being on the playground, they're already gone. And hard. It's like a whack-a-mole type of thing. We're less concerned about people being in parks, right? Like, if people can jog or walk and do those things, parks and, enjoy the open space, organized sports, people throwing big parties, stay away from.
We've taken the position in Oregon City that we never closed our parks. We just closed all the amenities within the parks. So we've always allowed people to go out and, kick a ball back and forth or throw a frisbee or, walk their dog or whatever. We just ask them not to stay off the playground, stay out of the picnic areas, stay off the skateboard park, things like that. I've noticed up at Bornstead, people have been pretty respectful about it. I haven't seen a lot of people on the playgrounds at all. There's one little group of teenagers in the neighborhood that show up every once in a while and kind of hang out around there, but they really don't, stay very long. When they do linger, they might sit on the swings for a few minutes, but that's about all I've noticed.
Yeah.
Laura, you had mentioned that you had seen dog parks open in Portland. Is that right?
Yep. So Gresham and Portland both have their dog parks open. And, obviously, Jordan, I don't know, maybe you can speak to that. Moving forward, I feel people I feel at least it's been my, what I've seen in the public. I think people have the social distancing thing kind of down. And I think a lot of people want to social distance for their own, health. As far as like opening up our dog park, even if we ask people to police it themselves, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, dog parks can be open. And again, it would just be about signage, and Lori said it, people are kind of aware of what the physical distancing requirements are these days. If you've gone to the grocery store or anything like that, you kind of have this down. There's another sort of layer of like, public's being asked to wear masks. And, I don't think we require it when you're outside recreating. But I think we would make sure that our signage, talks about that and tells people to follow the guidance for, I think it's the same as like any park really, stand apart, don't congregate in groups, and give other people space. I did, where I had a meeting today with the school district and we talked about this because we had collaborated on our closure for the parks. So they have, playgrounds and open space and, tracks and things like that, tennis courts. And so we'd probably do the same thing again, Sarah, is, look at similar signage that, playgrounds are off limits, but, people can go jog around the track or, kick a soccer ball around or use the tennis courts. Tennis would be a great activity, right? Like you're apart, just maybe, only serve with your own tennis ball or something.
Yeah, so there'll be kind of a gradual easing and phasing in parts of the park is the way I read it. Playgrounds will stay closed for a while.
Yes. Have you been following the ORPA recommendations also, Jordan?
Yeah, Sarah sent me. She's keeping me in the loop on those. And there's some links too with the CDC, but those are always a little bit different and maybe not as applicable. But.
They are. It's just the ORPA is a little bit, I think, clearer, a little bit more comprehensive than.
A little more detailed. Although they don't mention dog parks either.
No, I was just looking for it.
Specifically, I looked for it too.
Yeah.
But to me, if you're going to open a skate park with, asking for social distancing, I think a dog park falls into that category probably.
I would imagine so.
So do we want to make a recommendation to open up the skate park and the dog park to the city council, or is that a decision that you make, Jordan, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need a recommendation. I think this is what we're planning on. I think we're actively working on our reopening plans right now. And so I think what we'll probably end up doing is rolling this out. Either kind of depends on, honestly, when the county gets their approval, but we might end up rolling this out and communicating this, before phase 1, just because the governor is allowing it now. So, why wait really? And the weather's getting nicer. I think people are going out there anyways. And so rather than fighting it, get ahead and, get the information about how people can recreate safely. And I think that's especially if there's going to be a delay, another 2, 3, 4 weeks before the county's open, maybe this is something we can throw out there for people like, oh, our parks are open again, out there and exercise your dog.
That's the number one phone call I'm getting right now is about park.
And that's what I've seen on Facebook too. And I thought, if there's a way to open it up, by this, at least just the dog park, open it up by this weekend, given that the other Portland and Gresham ones are open, we're not, but that's up to you all, but that's why I was asking if we should be making a recommendation or how do you handle it?
Well, and if, I mean, I don't know, Jordan and Sarah, if you guys think that you can accomplish that by Friday, I mean, that's the go date for, businesses to open. But I don't know if you guys if that gives you enough time to get all your ducks in a row and signage, or.
We could at least get temporary signs.
Yeah, I could probably get some laminated signs, just simple signage up by Friday.
It's only going to be temporary anyways, the sign.
Yeah.
A month or 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Do you want me to go forward and just, I can communicate about signage outside the meeting, but.
Yeah, I mean, if your dog is coughing or short of breath, keep your dog home.
The dogs need to wear masks.
Muzzles.
Does anybody have any other comments on that topic?
Tell you what, Jordan, if you want dogs in a muzzle, you can come to my house and try and get my dog in one. It's a little bit like trying to chicken.
If you have muzzles for kids, that would be helpful.
I asked the lady about when the tree chipper or the chipper was going to be available, and she said not until the whole city was opened, I guess. But that's a pretty solitary activity.
The chipper?
Yeah, the chipper. You just do it yourself there by the road.
I mean, Jordan, you may want to address this. I don't know. Some of that, Susan, might be, I know some of the rental places were not wanting to rent certain equipment if it meant that people were going to be touching it a lot because they didn't have the capacity to disinfect and clean it afterward. So I don't know if that has something to do with it.
I don't know. Anyway, be nice.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll ask because it could be something we just limit the amount. Someone brings it back, we don't touch it. It sits there for 3 more days, and then we can cycle through. I mean, I think the virus can live on metal for 3 days, something like that. In the environment, it could be less than that. So I'll look at that. I know this is a popular time for activity.
It pretty much is just the, the feeder chute and the crank thing, I mean, it's just kind of wiping down. It's like wiping down your grocery cart. There's only a couple things to wipe down on it.
Just to clarify, the city loans out a wood chipper or something?
Yeah,
It's a big chipper. It's like a truck and
with a
big
truck.
truck.
Is there like insurance on that, or like?
Yep.
Yeah.
You have to pass a test. Jordan's laughing. You have to pass a test. I'm one of the frequent flyers on it. And you have to, it's intended to keep all the debris, from burning and keep stuff out of the dumps and, what do you call those,
That just seems
Green
like
bins.
a major liability.
It's worked out.
Oh.
We've had it for years and years, and it's been a
Yeah.
great
Good.
asset.
Great.
I got about 4 Douglas fir trees in my backyard. I could run through it real quick.
Are they this big?
Yeah, not exactly.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
about 6 foot.
So, is there any comments on the skate park, or do you hold off on the skate park, or any thoughts on the skate park?
Yeah, I mean, I think the skate parks can open. I have to check. Thought I saw that they could be open too under.
Yeah.
They can be opened with appropriate social distancing.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, right?
Right.
I mean, our skate park isn't that big. How many people can actually be in there utilizing it at one time?
I think it's more about the people that gather on the perimeter,
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the skaters, it's the watchers.
There's still
You could even
skateboarders.
put
and
down
mountain
some like
bikers.
duct tape or something on X's around the lining of the pole or something.
I know a couple of cities just put piles of sand out in their skate parks.
I know. It's ridiculous.
All right. Well, are there other topics that you want to kind of broach with us, Jordan, before you leave?
No, the only other thing was I know you guys had a conversation about that property.
Bell Street.
Yeah, behind Meinig there.
Yeah, we haven't had a conversation
Okay.
really.
Okay.
Oh, that's the pad townhomes, Kathleen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pad?
Yeah, by Joe's Donuts.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Oh.
We haven't, so we talked about it in terms of the pre-app, Jordan, but we haven't talked about the possibility of recommending to council yet that they purchase it. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that was the other topic I heard you guys, had an interest in. I think
Yeah.
I would start with, we reach out first to see if that application is still active. And then if there is interest in, it's one of those things like, do you reach out and say, hey, are you interested in selling? And, we actually aren't, the council's not interested in buying yet. So
Yeah.
But last I heard is there was a pre-app, but, a lot of things are changed or changing because of the coronavirus. So I know you guys probably will be interested in preserving that for expansion of the park or just having that buffer or whatever. But in the past, the city council has been approached with that. And maybe this is in the further past. And there wasn't a whole lot of interest at that time. But if the price is right.
Did you say if the price is right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, maybe the price has gone down. I don't know if it was like a couple hundred or 230 or something like that. I saw.
Yeah. I don't think we know what was offered previously and what was turned down, but we could probably figure that out.
Yeah, Scott might know that or Seth. But, it's kind of like, it would seem like it would be very difficult for them to be able to develop that parcel with the access issues that it has.
Yeah, when I think on that pre-app, that was what they were working on, is the traffic analysis and the access issues. And maybe that's why it took so long after that pre-app, because I think it was like a couple months ago at this point.
Yeah, it was.
And that's kind of, it's been, it's not the first time that's been proposed and stuff. And so, maybe waiting until it's, again, kind of appears as kind of not a viable option, then if they're trying to unload it, that might be the time to kind of consider it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be paying the, developable type rates for something like that really isn't developable.
Yeah. Quick.
Zillow says it's priced at $159. That doesn't seem right.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me crash the party for a little
Well,
bit.
just a second. There was also a discussion on this Bell Street thing. Are you aware of that?
You know, I saw a couple emails. I think it was, they had reached out to you, right, Kathleen? And then,
Yeah, and I didn't quite, know what, I think I've had conversations many years ago with, I don't think it, well, I don't know who, it was somebody over in that, like the, not the Marshalls, the folks that own the other parcel next to it.
yeah.
Off of Royal Lane there or something. Yeah, Marsh or something like that. Anyway, but no, I don't know where that came from. I gather he wants to do a zone change or something, is what it sounded like in his email.
Yeah.
And the thing is what he was talking about, is already stuff that's not developable. It's in the foot, it's along that creek. It's not. I think it's in the fish overlay. So, and I think the trails master plan would be, proposing some sort of a trail linkage on there, or at least, a sidewalk or something like that to connect Kate Schmidt with that parcel. He was kind of talking about a linear park. And again, that's where, if it's already undevelopable, I don't know, it's something, I suppose it's, when it comes forward as a proposal from them, that's something to consider. And it might be something, Sarah, to kind of talk to the parks consultants about, to see what they think about it. He was just kind of proposing some sort of a linear park, but I did kind of get I don't know what what he was proposing. It was pretty vague, but I kind of feel like he wants, if he makes it a linear park or does something like that, he wants to be able to make a zone change to get, I believe, delete the commercial and make it all apartments or something like that, or some sort of a zone change.
It's Bell Street and what?
It's at the end of Bell Street.
Where it
Past
ends.
Jewelberry there, past there by the high school. And so
Yeah.
you just kind of keep, where Bell Street dead ends.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty steep parcel, isn't it, Kathleen?
It's not too bad. There's just the stuff all down by the creek. And then it kind of has a bit of parts of it are steeper than others. It's about almost 16 acres.
Adjacent to the high school, you said?
It's adjacent to the high school property.
Okay.
Does it go all the way over to the athletic club? I don't remember. There might be something in between there. I think there's another parcel in between the athletic club and this parcel. So,
Jordan, I know you have to go. I can update you after more discussion about this. But we might need more information.
Yeah, I remember seeing that email, and I talked briefly with staff about it. I don't know if there's any formal proposal or not, or I mean, if he's looking to donate land or whatever for preserve, great, we'll look at it and see if it's worth it. But if it's to pull something off in exchange for a zone change or something like that, then that's a little different calculation.
Yeah.
Especially for that area. So yeah. Well, thanks, guys. It's good to see everybody, and stay
Thanks,
safe.
Jordan.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
So long, Jordan.
Hey, I wanted to just circle back about the property by Meinig. So Kelly, what Jordan was talking about is Kelly sent an email. Just wanted you all to know that there's just under $1 million in the fee and lieu account for parks. And so he wanted you to know that in the event that you were interested in talking about purchasing that property. So and Jordan had received that email too. I'm looking at Kelly's email now. So he just, Kathleen, I appreciate what you're saying, that this might not be the time, but Kelly just, I think, wanted to be sure that the Parks Board was aware of that, you know, that there seem to be some funds there.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, there's probably some higher priority needs out there.
Yeah,
You know, Deer Point and things like that, that will be somewhat revealed, I'm sure, in the master plan. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm
I
just
wouldn't want to
passing.
kind of blow our wad on that.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if it's selling, in my personal opinion, if it's selling for 159,000, it's very uncertain times. I think that would be a steal for that amount, that property and that location, personally. But there's a lot of assumptions in there.
Yeah, I don't know that it's selling for that.
Yeah.
But again, you know, I mean, I think there's probably need to find out from Kelly what the status of the application is and whether that's going anywhere or not. You know, from my understanding, they can't get access off of there from ODOT because, you know, that's what we heard at our last meeting was that, you know, with that intersection there, that'd be a problem or something. But I guess we could try to find out from Kelly what the status.
And it was listed, Makoto's right, in 2017 for 159, but 3 years later, who knows what it's being listed for now. But just for FYI.
You know, we don't know where the economy is going, and so that creates uncertainty, which would be a selling point or a buying point for us or whatever. I don't know, however you look at it. Because we
How big is, do you know how big it is? Does it show that on
it's
Makoto?
0.59 acres. And it's a 2019 assessed value of 159,000.
Okay.
I mean, pretty reasonably priced.
Anybody else have thoughts on
I tend to,
Maybe I should
tend to lean
the city for ingress and egress rights. I don't know.
You know, I tend to agree with Kathleen on this. I wouldn't mind buying the property, but I would rather wait till we get the master plan completed and take a look and see if we have a higher priority need for it. I do see the value to buying it and protecting, using that as a buffer for Meinig Park would be a nice thing.
Kathleen, you're off. You're
You're
muted.
muted, I think.
I'm also Don Robertson.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
done.
I found it in my spam folder
Okay.
from COS Zoom or something like that. I was looking for something from you, Sarah. I apologize.
That's okay.
Because we usually do happy hour Zoom now, and I get an email from my friend. So
Those are fun Zooms.
you know, I'm kind of, you know, I don't do this very often at all. I know you guys who are working a lot are more tech savvy, but it's really a challenge for me, so I apologize.
I've never been accused of being tech savvy.
Okay, so has everybody had a chance to review the meeting minutes?
Somewhat.
From our June, we're kind of going back in history here, but our July and our September meeting minutes, is that right?
No. So for the consent agenda minutes, it's from March and April. If you remember
Okay.
the meeting last month, I didn't have March's minutes done. I'd been out a little bit.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
the Zoom recording, I had to work with Zoom forever to get that converted. And then I was able to transcribe those minutes. So it is 2 months worth. One of the things I'd like to just remind you, in the April meeting, there was a formal motion Dawn put forward to put some correspondence together for council about your position on the pad townhomes with regard to its impact on Meinig Park and Fantasy Forest. So, you know, it's down in the minutes a ways, but I didn't want that to get lost because I had thought originally it was just a motion to make a recommendation, but it was actually you guys had phrased it as correspondence that you would put together for council.
One time we're at like Discovery Park at the beach. Like I had to go find a bathroom. And then
I don't know. I don't know.
out there. And like she's trying to frantically call me like, ow, my nose is bleeding or something, you know, like, and I come running
I don't know
back.
where that's coming from.
I was gonna say, is anybody else getting a bloody nose?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, hold.
What?
Okay, hang on.
What are you talking about?
Okay.
Sorry, I have my family's here, so. Sorry about that. Okay, so the meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review them?
Yes.
The other thing, just real quick, while you guys are debating whether you've read the minutes or not, if you look on the lower left corner of your screen, there's a mute button there. So if you're not talking, if you hit that mute button, nobody hears anything that's going on in your house.
Thank you. I did hit it. I was hitting it and then I forgot.
So I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
For both sets?
Yes, the whole agenda, the whole consent agenda.
Okay, are there any changes to any of the meeting minutes? Hearing none. We have a motion by Don and a second by Mike to, is that right? Is
Yes,
it Mike?
Yes.
yes.
Approve the consent agenda. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Oh, now what? See, I gotta mute myself. Hold on.
Sarah, what were you saying about a letter or something for the council on the pad? Mute.
Mute.
My dogs aren't barking tonight. I'll just leave it open until they start to. In the April meeting minutes, there was a motion by the board to draft some correspondence to council about your position on the development, the pad townhomes. That's that property by Minnick Park. And you had concerns about its impact on Minnick Park and Fantasy Forest, and you had wanted to draft some correspondence. And that was, the wording in the motion was correspondence specifically, so I just wanted to bring that back to everybody's attention so it didn't get missed. I don't know if somebody's planning to take that on, or if you want to reword that motion and just have it forwarded to council as a recommendation. Does that make sense? If you listen to the recording, you'll know what I'm talking about. But so Don, your motion said, I move to draft correspondence to council regarding our opposition to this development because of its impact on Minnick Park and Fantasy Forest.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, is anybody hot to draft this correspondence? Hearing none, I would move that we change that instruction to forward a recommendation to the council rather than draft correspondence.
I second that.
Can you word it so that your position on that is in the motion? The development?
Oh,
So Michael, it'd be more like a motion to recommend against the development of this property. Something like
yes,
that.
sure.
Yeah, and I think that we had in there, the concerns, that we recommend a motion against developing the property because of the impacts to parking, parking lot areas for the park, plus
Fantasy
the
Forest.
proximity to Fantasy Forest, right?
There was also the question about access from behind Joe's Donuts or the city hall.
The
Yeah,
intersection.
Yeah,
That's what-
so, and that was going to take up some of the parking for the park. But yeah, so access from that end, and also the reduction in parking for the park and the impacts to Fantasy Forest. So 3 different aspects within the recommendation for denial.
Okay, you folks are doing a good job of wording my motion.
Good job, Michael.
What's that?
I said, good job.
Yes. Thank you all. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, that's right, you second. Okay.
Makoto seconded it. Do we have any more discussion on it? All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So Michael will.
Should we have put consideration of buying it later or something into that, or is that a separate issue?
I think we're gonna hold off on that a little bit and just see where all this goes a little, and kind of tie in with our Parks Master Plan. I think that's still on the table as an option. And
But that sounds like a good idea. It shouldn't be part of this motion.
right,
Okay.
yeah, because it's, the price is gonna
Got it.
change, I think, if we say we recommend denial, but we want to buy it. Because yeah, like I said, I think there's other priorities out there a little bit, and yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that we should look into buying it at the same time we're recommending denial. We probably ought to separate.
It's a little partial there.
Like I said, the price is going to go up big time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the next item was the city code annexation text. Has everybody had a chance to read that?
That was long.
Yeah, it was very specific, very technically worded.
And, there's a lot of stuff in there to unpack. And I kind of asked Sarah a couple questions about it. And, we're just tonight focusing in on the aspect of parks and trails. So one of the things that I kind of caught on there was, let's see if I still have it open. Towards the very end of that, it's under 17.78.50 B, and there's a mention of it.
Relating to our master plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the right reference?
Well, it seems to just lump in all the city's master plans in general. And I don't see a direct reference to parks master plan. Oh, yeah, internet and parks. Okay. So there's a reference to parks, but I'm not seeing a direct reference to parks and trails master
Well,
plan.
I saw one in there because it said the parks master plan, and I wanted that changed to the parks and trails master plan.
Right, but
where was
7B
that?
doesn't specifically call out parks and trails master plan. It just references parks.
And it references parks in the initial sentence. And
Under G, look under G.
G?
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, E, F.
I have not seen.
It only goes to D or E.
Oh, gee, it's down on after page.
Oh, I'm
it's on
sorry,
top of
yeah,
page
it's
6.
17.78.60
Yeah.
G.
That references Parks Master Plan,
Yeah.
which I assume is shorthand for Parks and Trails Master Plan.
Right. So, Sarah, under 17.78.60 G, it should reference the Parks and Trails Master Plan, and it just says the Parks Master Plan.
Right,
But
that'd
that's
be
also,
G3.
yeah, G3, yeah. And that's just the developer has to provide a narrative statement. I think what we need up in the other part under the criteria, and that's 17.78.50, is that the, we need a clear spelled out reference to that, to the Parks and Trails Master Plan in, I guess, B, if that's where it goes.
Right, but this is just annexation code, right? It's not,
Yes.
right, so it's not development. It's just, so whoever's annexing in has to reference it.
But for the annexation criteria to whether or not the city will annex it, there has to be some criteria for whether or not we say yes or no, correct?
Right, but that's not the same. That's not the same as developing it. That's just bringing it into the city limits. Developing it will have a set of criteria.
But okay, so here's where I'm kind of going with that. This annexation criteria should be like, this is where, there was some discussion before about, well, takings and the stuff in the master plan, and it's not exact, and maybe they don't want to donate land, and they'd rather pay fee and lieu, all that stuff, all that kind of discussion. Here, annexation is somewhat, what do you call that? Subject to, you don't have to say yes.
Right.
Now, here's the opportunity for us to say, well, one of the things that we want you to do is, there's a park in this area, and we would, or not. I mean, if there's not a park in the area in the master plan, then, then we don't need to do that. But if there is a park in the master plan on the parcel to be annexed, then this is the time to kind of say, yeah, we'll consider annexing it if you, are going to go along with the planned park in that area.
Right.
Because you'll have more leverage here than you will once it gets to development.
Yeah, they're wanting.
Yeah, right. And we can say no. And so I think that's kind of the critical, crux of the whole, somehow spelling it out in this section to kind of represent that. And I don't quite know what the right words are, but here's the opportunity to kind of ensure that any annexation coming in is going to be compatible with our Parks and Trails Master Plan.
Right. Sarah, can you talk to Kelly about that?
Yes. I can share this part of the conversation with him. You also have the option to make a recommendation. But I can share this conversation with him. That was the intent of having it on the agenda for sure.
Right. Well, I like Kathleen, I'm not exactly sure what kind of language that would entail. It's hard to make a recommendation and say, do this, when we're really not sure what the right terminology is to say, do this.
Okay, I'll just make sure that he has, the content of this conversation.
Can you just show him the video of this conversation?
Yeah, or I can
That might be the easiest way.
Yeah.
That way you can see what our intent is.
Yeah. Can do.
What do you think of that, Kathleen?
That sounds good. Yeah, I think, does everybody else understand the kind of the concept here is that, when you're doing an annexation, the city has all the discretion. That's what the word I was looking for. You know, they can say yes or no. And so these annexation criteria are really important to whether or not we say yes or no. And so we want to, because we have discretion in this step, where we don't have a lot of discretion once it's annexed in, then they kind of hold all the, they hold the ball. Then we want to make sure that in this step, we've got it so that we can implement our Parks and Trails master plan with, if it's land dedication or whatever it is, plan for, bless you.
Bless you.
Whatever it's, and if there's nothing in the Parks and Trails master plan, then then it's not going to come into play. Then it would just be a fee in lieu of. But,
right.
But this is the place where we can kind of get something in the findings that, condition.
Well,
I don't know if it's conditions. Go ahead.
They could front load the requirements.
Right. Into conditions for approval for annexation is that it's compatible with the Parks and Trails master plan, park sightings or trail sightings or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on that? I think, it's interesting to hear the rest of the discussion on there. And, folks, is this going before the Planning Commission and then the City Council, Sarah? Do you know?
I'm not sure what the process is. I can find out and follow up.
Yeah.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Lori, do you know?
I haven't heard anything about this coming before us. To be honest, I haven't looked at Monday night's agenda yet either. So I would assume it goes to planning. But yeah, me personally, I'd kind of like Kelly's input on this as far as, for wording. But ultimately, that's up to you guys and how you want to handle that.
Yeah, I think you stepped away, but we were just saying that, we encouraged him to listen to it and listen to what our intent was and then come up with the wording that accomplishes that.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Kathleen. No, I heard it. I stepped away, but just right around the backside of the computer, so I was still listening.
Oh, sure you did.
I had to refill my soda.
Oh, sure it's soda.
Okay. Are there other parts of this sections that we need to address? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Any other discussion on this annexation criteria for Parks and Trails? Okay. All right, what's the next agenda item?
Belle Street.
Okay, we kind of discussed that.
Roundup discussion is next on my agenda here.
I got so many windows. This is, okay. Is that? Jesus.
So basically, you need more information about the Belle Street property and what their intent is, what they're offering.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we're not in a place to kind of negotiate it. It's kind of something where they need to kind of go through the official channels.
Okay.
And I believe, I'm trying to think if that is in, I don't know for sure, whether or not it's already in the city or not. So.
That where Belle Street just dead ends into the woods?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know there's a parcel right over there, but I think it might be that marsh property that's not in the city. It's kind of behind Baskin Robbins there. But I don't remember if this one is or not. But anyway, they're going to need to come in with their proposal, and we'll work through the process. And I think it's something that is part of the Parks and Trails master plan. We can kind of, mention that, here's what they proposed. I think already in that section we had a trail linkage going from Kate Schmidt it's the existing trail that's already there. You know what I mean? It kind of goes there on the, it's not on the athletic property, but it's kind of in that parcel over there. That's where the Kate Schmidt Trail corridor is. And it's also a future road corridor. And then it continues, where the existing trail just takes you right there to Belle Street. And and depending on what they end up developing, I guess we'll see what, we'll give a recommendation like any other development. So any other thoughts on Belle Street?
Kathleen, did you reply to his email that he sent you?
I think I just said, I forwarded it to, and I just said, I said I forwarded it to the Parks and Trails Board, and we, kind of discuss it. But I think I'm just going to send him just what I said is that, we're assuming you'll be working with the city and that we'll see it as official process. We're not in a position to cut any deals or anything, nor
Right, it's almost like he wants to do a little bit of an end run on.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of folks wanting zone changes around, and I think that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's that. Let's see. Okay. The master plan. Oh, planned unit roundup.
Oh, roundup.
Okay. This is my item that I asked to be put on the agenda. I watch too much television, but one of the things I keep seeing on television are advertisements and announcements about class action lawsuits over Roundup and its use and its danger. And so I looked up a few things. There have been years of controversy internationally about whether this is a dangerous chemical or not. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has called it a probable carcinogen. Now, the Roundup company, Monsanto, and now Bayer, that owns Monsanto, disputes that. And there have been lots of lawsuits, and they win some and they lose some. If you look at the literature, it's not at all conclusive that it's a carcinogen, but it's not at all conclusive that it isn't. If I had children, I wouldn't use Roundup in my backyard to take care of a couple of weeds and put my children at risk. And if I wouldn't do that with my children, should Sandy be doing that with Sandy's children in our parks? That's kind of where I'm coming down on this. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to look at any literature but we all saw what was given to us a few months ago by the maintenance people. And they don't, according to that, they don't use Roundup very much. And they only use it under limited conditions. So this isn't something that my hair is on fire over. I don't think it's a terribly important thing, especially with the virus around. This almost sounds like it's kind of tangential. But I just think it doesn't make a lot of sense for this to be used in our park system.
I'll make a comment on what I recall from years ago, looking at it. It seemed like the potential cancer issues were only for people that were professional landscapers that were using it on a daily basis or on a very regular basis, that those were the folks that were developing, was it non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or whatever it was. I didn't really see anything in the articles that were sent out that added any detail to that. But that's from memory from a few years ago. And, personally, if we can do away with any chemicals, that's great. But I don't know if it's a risk to somebody who just walks through the park or is playing in the area and it's used once or twice.
From my experience with a 3 and 4-year-old, they sit, I think they spray along the borders of the big toy boxes, right? Do they?
It was
So
my,
what? I'm sorry.
it was
Along-
my under, I don't,
Along the border of the playgrounds, to keep the weeds down from.
No, I think they said they would not be spraying along the edges of the playground.
Okay.
yeah.
I do know that they do use it in the flower beds, around the shrub beds and things. They also typically use it on fence lines, but not,
Along the trail, like Tickle Creek Trail, do they spray it to keep the blackberry bushes down, or the other one?
it wouldn't be Roundup that they're spraying on those.
No, the other one that's in the ingredient. And
Crossbow.
Crossbow.
yeah.
Yeah, I use that trail fairly regularly. I've never seen anything that makes me think that they use any type of spray back there, but.
The only time we have used it, we did get a grant to get rid of some noxious weeds, and it was a very strategic process that we used the contractors that Metro Open Space uses to get rid of some holly, blackberries, and one other
And is that
problem.
on the trail? So like if there's blackberry bushes growing there and there's blackberries and my kid goes to grab one to eat it, do I have to worry?
No, what
Yeah.
happened is in the fall, they cut them, and it's way after they've bloomed or fruited, and so they cut them down, and then they just spray the stubs of the roots, which then in the fall they carry that chemical down into the roots, and that pretty much kills it. Sometimes you have to come back and do a repeat process the next year. You can do it in the spring or you can do it in the fall, and that usually takes care of it. And I believe they did use some Crossbow on some, they cut the holly and I don't know if it was the Japanese, there was a couple different weeds, pretty noxious weeds.
Oh, the knotweed?
Knotweed, I think it was some knotweed. They did some knotweed and blackberries and holly, and maybe some laurel too. There was laurel in there. So yeah, it was just to try to kind of get rid of the noxious weeds there along Tickle Creek.
Yeah.
Hey, Kathleen, just out of curiosity, because you've been on this board for some time, has the Parks Board ever worked with the school district as far as like what they spray? Just because some of the parks do butt up against, like school district property or places where the school district would use. Do they use any of those chemicals, or do we have any idea what they use for their? None.
I think they tend to use more, more than we do, and but they've got ball fields and all that other stuff. But yeah, I haven't had that conversation. I guess one of the things that kind of comes to mind, that from what I recall, and I again was trying to skip around and open the attachment that I had earlier, was it seemed like last time where we got to was that what we heard from you, Don, was that the city parks folks are supposed to have some sort of a, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but some sort of a little bit of a manual or policy or, documented thing about what we use where and when. And then a documentation of that, like, okay, we sprayed the dog park on, April 6th or whatever. Just
Right,
kind of a
supposed to keep a
record.
log.
Yeah, work log. And I think what I heard you say today, Sarah, was that we have that one-page kind of summary from Joe, right?
Yeah, I forwarded that copy to you all again, the guidelines that they use. and, you know, some detail about where, but not a lot of detail about that, from Joe. And I'm trying to recall myself, because I feel like I followed up with Joe when this was on a topic of discussion last year, and that they were keeping a log where they were required to. But I can confirm that, because I'm having difficulty recalling for sure.
We were, if I recall, trying to have a dialogue with Joe about this. We had invited him to our meetings and he never came. And we never, and then everything just sort of tapered off and we never went any further with that.
I thought that he'd gotten you guys the information that you wanted. So he had talked about the stuff that they needed to do and that they were keeping the logs and all of that.
You had sent some questions and he replied.
Yeah.
Written answers. The logs specifically, I have to go back and look. I do know that they put signs up, and their intention is to leave them up for 48 hours when they have sprayed in an area.
Yeah, I've seen that.
We're getting some noise in the background again somewhere.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wanted to say at the garden, one woman that gardens there saying she came at the garden from the west entry to Bornstead Park, and the sign had been posted on, I think, the south entry. And so she didn't see the sign even until she had been wandering around there with her dog and herself. And she was upset about that. And it's just my perception. It still seems to be pretty loosey-goosey. And like I mentioned, the boundary of the garden still looks like a dead zone. And so somebody must be spraying something. I don't know when, but it's right that like 9 inches or whatever, right at the fence of the garden is a dead zone. With something is making it a brown dead zone. And it's so, you know, anyway, that bothers me.
Susan, I did talk to Joe about that when you had mentioned it, and it sounds like they did spray around the perimeter early in the year. But he said that they will not do that going forward. They'll weed whack that instead. And he recognizes the concern about that.
Okay.
But I did follow up with him to find out whether that was this year. They did post a sign, but you know, it's 48 hours, and at that time of year, not a lot of people are in the community garden. So I don't know how many people saw the sign or knew that it was going on.
And what about the thing of like he posted one place, but where a park has multiple entrances, and if people wanted to avoid the situation, I mean, they should have a posting maybe on all the major entries.
My impression of where they're posting is where they're spraying. So when I see them out there with their postings, they're literally posting in the shrub bed that they just sprayed.
Yeah.
So you don't get to decide ahead of time before you get sort of close about whether you want to be there or not.
Well,
I mean, this is what this woman kind of wanted. She wanted to know, and when she got to the edge of the park, if there's this stuff being sprayed around in the park, which she's going to walk through, she wanted to know, which doesn't seem unreasonable. So,
you know, I think one of the challenges with like Bornstedt and Bluff in particular is there's so many places to enter the park. You know, you can literally walk out your front door and be in the park, and so that's challenging.
Yeah, for me, from my perspective, I'm fine as long as they're posting where they're spraying. You know, I don't see the maybe I'm blind to it, you know, because I've been dealing with it for many years. But from my perspective, it's important to warn people when they're going to step into the spray zone where it's been sprayed, as opposed to just stepping into the park in general.
Well, I kind of, I was reading through that thing that Joe wrote up is just one page, and it doesn't, for example, say, and the whole thing that generated all this concern legitimately was the community garden. And it really doesn't, in what he wrote up, it doesn't address that about how the community garden will be addressed or not. And I don't think we need to kind of go park by park how we're going to, deal with each park, but I think there needs to be, some general guidelines that, in a community park, it's going to be treated this way. And the importance for that is so that when Joe leaves, next week or whatever, then somebody behind Joe knows what the policy is. And I guess what I'd like to know, Don, because I don't know what we need, is, when you look at that one-page summary policy, whatever you call it, is that adequate to what we're, I know there's probably what's required, and then there's maybe something beyond that. But
I did not see it this time.
It was sent out yesterday. She sent it out yesterday.
Yeah, it's in today's packet.
I don't think I attached it to the agenda. I don't think I had the one from Joe at that moment, but I did send it out in an email.
It was at May 12th at 10:05 a.m. It was that email.
Okay, let me look.
Okay.
So that was today at 10:05?
Yesterday.
Yesterday at 10:05.
Oh, yesterday at 10:05.
I got it at 10:06.
Your internet is slow then, Sam.
You're a little later in the email list, probably.
Was it with the bylaws?
Yeah.
It was the other attachment besides the bylaws.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you continue on? I'll keep reading this and.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just, I think the reason this has been kind of a do loop is that we just need to understand what is required as far, when we say some sort of a policy or a manual or whatever, what does that look like? I'm sure there are other cities and towns that have something like this already done, and I don't believe it's going to take a lot of extra effort on anybody's part, but, and again, I don't even think it needs to be anything that much more than what's required, but at a minimum, we need to kind of have this pretty understandable manual or policy as to what's going to get sprayed where, when, and I would like to see that put on our city parks webpage so that, under a frequently asked question or something like that, when people want to know what we do, what we spray in our parks, that the answer is easily found for them.
In my mind, there's two things that would go a long way to strengthening this. And one would be to just say, we will not spray pesticides so many feet from the community gardens and so many feet from playgrounds and so many feet from picnic areas. And then the other part is that they will maintain a log of spray. And to me, that's the only thing lacking. I don't think they have to have a formal policy beyond this, but to me, that's just like a no-brainer. That's protection for themselves, for the city. So I think if they would just simply add a couple of sentences that says, these are the areas we will not spray in, that they should be able to cover themselves that, and add in there that they will maintain their logs that identify date, time, place, weather conditions, spray mixture as to what they're using. They're very careful to say they use a wind meter. They'll only spray under less than 8 miles per hour. They talk about the targets that they use, all good stuff. Those two elements are the only thing that I see missing.
So if they did that, it says unofficial here at the top of the page. If they made those changes that Don just indicated, would it make sense for this to go before the council and the council to adopt this as policy? And so it becomes official instead of unofficial?
That's what I would do, but sometimes there's people that embrace having that policy that protects them and says, look, you don't, park board, you don't like it, I'm really sorry, but this is the official policy adopted by the city council. Joe Citizen, I'm working within the guidelines of the official policy adopted by the council, as opposed to saying, well, I have this unofficial policy that I wrote up, made up myself, and it looks kind of right to me, so that's why I'm doing it. To me, it makes sense to have it adopted so everybody can see it, everybody knows, and then we don't have to talk about it all the time.
I think the other thing that's came up a little bit today was, do they sign where they're spraying?
They
or
do.
they sign? Well, I know, but the question is like when
Oh,
I
at the
walk into
entrance
the
of the
park, how do I know where, or even if I see a sign, if it's kind of in an odd location, it's like, well, I saw it over at Sandy Bluff there, and the sign said something like, well, where it's marked with some paint or something like that, and I didn't see any paint at all. And so I was, it's just confusing. And so the question is, do you sign it along the sidewalks going into, at a minimum, the sidewalks going into the park? I get it that you can walk, across the field or whatever, but if you're on a sidewalk, there might, there's not that many sidewalks going into each of our parks. And so just putting, something along the entrance sidewalk saying, this park has been sprayed, or, and the areas that have been sprayed are posted, or something like that. So people know, because if you stand over by some bush, I don't know, well, did just this bush get sprayed or did the whole park get sprayed? It's just kind of hard to know.
Right. And it wouldn't be that hard. I wouldn't think it would be that hard for them to have a couple of signs made up. They're generic like that. Caution, this park was sprayed within the last 48 hours. And then they can have a second set of signs that say this area within the park was sprayed within the last 48. And it'd be like a little campaign sign, right? Just stick it out there.
Yeah, and I think so having the signing requirements incorporated into this little one-page thing would be also helpful, just so that, the guy that gets, told to go out there and do it has something to go off. He knows what he's supposed to do, so.
Right, I thought I saw in here that they would sign. I had thought I'd seen a place in here where they said they would sign it.
It's number 5.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, signs are posted
in parks.
Yeah. But just clarifying that a little bit, like, signs are posted at park entrances and at, locations for spraying, or, at a minimum, it needs to be at the park entrances, but it would be helpful for folks to know, what's the extent of the spraying so they can avoid it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing it doesn't seem to say anything about bees, or trying specifically to avoid harming bees. And to me, there's so many very, very vague and subjective things they have in there. I mean, if somebody wanted to challenge anything, I just, it's all very vague things except for the wind speed. That's the one specific thing that needs to be in there is the wind speed. And so.
Well, and that's why I was recommending that they put distance requirements.
Yeah.
50 feet from the garden, 50 feet from the playground equipment, 50 feet from the splash pad.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
like they say, spot spray treatment, and then they say no large areas. But what the hell? I mean, what does that mean?
well, I know
I
what
don't
that
know what
means.
is a spot and what is a large area.
Yeah.
And they don't say how far ahead of time they will post the signs before they spray. So like that one incident where I kind of got sprayed, the guy actually went and posted the sign after I got sprayed. And I assume they're kind of not going to do that in the future. But I mean, since they don't say, you know, like the rule is you post the sign up on Tuesday, you spray on Wednesday or something like that. And you know, you do say where it will be or what it will be or how much it will be, or, you know, but it doesn't say things like that. And I can see how for somebody that just does it all the time, that would seem like, you know, like explaining how you're going to wash your dishes or something, but it's not, you know, it's more, I think it deserves more specificity because it is Roundup. And, you know, I mean, and because of its impact on people and animals, children and insects, and God knows what else, you know, birds and earthworms or something. And just the fact that the way the community garden is, and I appreciate the fact that, you know, if it said specific things about that and they back away from that, because obviously we're growing food things out there. And, yeah. I just think they should be more specific.
Can you work with Joe a little bit and have him listen to this video, Sarah, and incorporate those specifics that we're asking for to the extent that he can?
Yeah, I can share this with him, and I will also just kind of type up the highlights for him and send him the video as well.
Well, if we're going to work through Joe, and that seems to be a good way to do this, could we ask him to include what we've been talking about in this kind of thing, and then he can put something together that would go to the city council and become official policy, not their unofficial guideline? And he can know that he's doing that he's preparing a draft for the council to do that? Could we ask him to do that?
I can go through the Public Works Director to talk to Joe, because, you know, that's my best route. I can't direct Joe to do that.
Sure.
I can share this information with the Public Works Director along with the minutes and the video, that this is something that the board has been discussing, and these are pieces they would like to see in the policy, and that they are recommending that it goes before council. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, I think that's a logical way to go. We've tried to engage with Joe last year, and we didn't quite get our satisfaction apparently. So I think we need to just move up to the next level. Apparently we'll need to work up the chain of command to get to where we need to be.
Almost 2 years old.
Okay.
I want to kind of clarify. I don't feel like Joe's been trying to avoid the board. This is just, you know, not something he's been directed to do or been accustomed to doing, and he's.
I get that.
Okay. And I feel like he's been very open to the things that have come, and I think if I can detail them out a little bit and then, you know, speak with Mike about it, we'll see if we can move it forward.
Good.
Yeah, and I think this is something that's going to, you know, help us all be on the same page to understand, you know, where it is and is not going to get used, and also just be something that's then able to be used by his employees and, you know, his replacement at some point in the future, so that everybody's on the same page. And and then, like I said, we can put it on the city website if people have questions, and it is a legitimate concern. Like you said, all those Roundup commercials and stuff, people are seeing that, and it's a legitimate issue that we need to just make sure that the communication is there. We're not trying to interfere with what the practices are. It's just more of a communication of what we're doing where, so that everybody knows. Yeah.
But it's not a matter of our trying to direct Joe. We sound like we want to make a recommendation to the city council that they adopt a policy. And we'd like Joe's input so that we don't recommend anything that he doesn't, that isn't practical or that won't work for him. So we're not trying to tell him what to do. We want his input for what we're going to do, which is to recommend to the council that they adopt a policy.
Yeah, because we don't, I don't personally know how much resources he has, manpower, time, and that all factors in,
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. I think we can.
Okay, let's move on to the next thing because it's getting late. Planned unit development discussion. A little bit of this kind of overlaps onto the Sandy Parks master plan, but as I understand it, this planned unit developments can be the planned developments have to also adhere to any parks and trails master planning, so if there's a park located there, that's still required. It's not like they can just give us, steep, wet ground and call it a park. The 25%, the planned developments are required to, I guess, identify 25% of the area as open space. And my concern on that was, again, sometimes, in general, that's probably going to be wet, steep stuff. I don't know that it's going to be anything usable. Our current code, usable from a, not to say that that's worthless, it's valuable wildlife habitat, yada, yada, I get all that, but it's not something that, the intent of a planned development is that there's these kind of open green spaces that people can kind of use while then having much higher density in between the green spaces. I think that was the intent for this planned developments. So the question becomes, in addition to any required parks that may or may not be required in a planned development, on these open spaces that are intended to provide some green space, yard space, whatever for these developments, how much of that is required to be kind of usable or not. And from what I can understand, none of it at this point is required to be, less than a certain slope or, not wetlands or things like that. So, so there's kind of maybe wanting to make a suggestion at some point in the future about what's the intent for those open spaces. And if they are intended to be usable, then we need to make a requirement that a certain, if it's 25%, then at least, 5 or 10% of it should be usable. And then the other thing that kind of comes into play then is all that land then becomes our responsibility. And that's a lot to take on when we've already got, parks and trails to deal with. The Parks and Trails Master Plan did identify, they've gone through and kind of categorized all of our existing open space and natural areas. And they, for example, the Sandy River Park was identified, as mostly, natural space and not, it's not like a developed, 140 acres of developed park. So they did preliminarily identify a need in, 20 years into the future for some more green space natural areas. And these planned developments may address that need. But I guess the question comes into play as to how much is the city wanting to take on in these, with these proposals, and what does that do to, the priority parks and trails that we already have planned, or, you know, that we already have, and then also that, you know, may be coming in the future. Anybody have any thoughts on all that?
From what I understood of our last meeting, with how Jordan explained PUDs and the existing loopholes, it sounds like there's more than just open space, park space issues with the whole PUD wording and coding. I'm kind of curious, Lori, what's your take on PUDs and the loopholes that are existing within it and all that stuff?
I wouldn't be able to comment on loopholes with the PUDs, right, without something like in front of me.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, yeah. Sorry about that.
It kind of seems to me like it's an open hole for developers to kind of gain an upper hand in power and take it away from them, and the city kind of gives up power in decision making.
Well, I'm trying to kind of focus it in on the parks and trails aspect.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that would be great if we could send in wording to, you know, that the city council can solidify into the code. But to me, it sounds like it's kind of, there's way more issues with it than just us, and that it should be repealed until Kelly can get that kind of figured out. He said it would be 6 months or more before he can even look at it, which means that that's 6 months of, you know, developers kind of having their way with our city.
So Makoto, what I can kind of comment on is that the council's well aware of, you know, some challenges with the current zoning, and is very eager to look at a lot of that zoning, and specifically some of the stuff that you're speaking to right now. Kelly, the reason that it's my understanding, not trying to speak for him, but the reason it's going to take him 6 months to get to it is, you know, obviously his department's very busy right now with things, and that's just,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, and with personnel, that's how long it's going to take him to get to it. The city attorney is also aware, so it's definitely something that we're wanting to tackle this year, and are aware of.
Well, I think possibly, you know, it's been brought up with our consultants that are doing our Parks and Trails Master Plan, and it might be helpful to just have them make a recommendation to us about, you know, how that can be worded or crafted to meet our future need without becoming overwhelming responsibility. I mean, they should be taking a crack at it anyway. What do you think, Don?
I think that's about the only way it's going to get done. I think, you know, I'm not surprised that Kelly's kind of up to his eyeballs with stuff, and it's pretty hard for, you know, to have a related but not necessarily direct advisory board. I mean, it's not like we're the planning commission saying we want you to update this code. You know, we're a tangential group that has a very specific focus and a very specific need that wants a very specific fix to one problematic issue, whereas he's probably looking on a much grander scale, trying to deal with other code violations or code issues that need to be cleaned up. And so, yeah, you kind of got to get in line, and that line can shift sometimes depending on where those priorities are. So I think our best bet, maybe if we have our consultants take a look at it, and maybe they can make a recommendation on appropriate language that they've seen in other municipal codes. That makes sense to you?
Do others have thoughts about that? Sam, Michael, Susan, Makoto?
I think that would be great to get the consultants to, you know, give some kind of advice or recommendation. I think along with that recommendation, we should, I mean, conservatively speaking, we should probably recommend that the whole PUD be taken out, because it can be done within one city council meeting until not only the parks part of it is fixed, but all the other parts of it are fixed.
I thought we brought up the idea of having a moratorium on PUDs, and he had
More,
pretty much
yeah,
said,
Kelly said the moratorium doesn't necessarily work, that it would be easier and faster for the city council to just nix the whole PUD code system and not allow it until it was all fixed and bring it back.
Do others have thoughts about that?
That's why I was kind of asking Lori what her opinion of it is.
Lori, will you be able to report that back to the council?
That you guys want the PUDs out of?
We either want the code language adjusted, so we have more flexibility to say no. That this property that they're giving us, which is, we just don't want to get stuck with all the trash property all the time.
Yeah, well, I hear you. Would that be better coming from you guys as a recommendation, or I don't know.
Well, my question would be more along the lines of, can you find out if other people agree with it or not before we put the energy into taking the issue on?
Sure, I can do that.
I think, you know, another approach to it is, and I'm not trying to kind of make it more difficult for them to do it. Well, you know, I am and I'm not, but I think it should be something that is carefully considered, and requiring, you know, like if you required 25% of the land to be usable parkland or open space land, that's obviously going to change the economics of the whole thing. You know, and right now we you know, as I understand it, we require 0%. So, you know, somehow there's some number in there between 0 and 25 to make it still, you know, feasible from an economic standpoint perspective, but also not, you know, kind of a careful consideration for both of us. I guess let me kind of roll that back a little bit. What I guess I'm saying is that I think we need to be able to kind of have some slight tweaks to our city code on two fronts. One of them is this planned unit development stuff, where we add in something that says a certain percentage has to be usable land. That another criteria is added in there as to, you know, what now it says something like it should be allowed where it's an exceptional something or other, and that's just not even defined anywhere. So, you know, I think it's important to put in some, and, you know, to use something we've all heard a lot lately is clear and objective criteria that you know, that speak to doing this in an area where, you know, it does make sense to do this in some areas, and here's the criteria where it makes sense to do that. And so that, you know, we can all kind of look at that and come to the same conclusion that, yeah, this is in the best interest of this area. So adding some clear and objective criteria into the plan development for where it's an appropriate option, and what those criteria are all something that we could look at and agree to. And then the other kind of aspect of the code is the parks and trails open space. One of the things that we need to be doing is parks and trails zone that we have does not have, you know, we've got that whole code section 17.84 or 86, one of those two, 84 I think, talks about how they dedicate land or fee in lieu of and all that, but it doesn't have in there, and what we need is actual code compliance language in there, like what's allowable, what's not allowable, where do you have to have a parking lot, where do you have to have a sidewalks, and the same kind of things that are already there for the residential zones and the other zones. We don't have that for our parkland. And when you don't have it, then anytime you want to do anything, it becomes, what's that called? A code, a variance. You have to get a variance to do it, even though we've designated it as parkland, whether or not we have to create a parking lot or not is not stated in our zone. And so I'm a little worried that because it's not written down, we may have to request stuff or things like that. So I think we need to kind of have some more additional code language specifics in our Parks and Trails open space plan, and also in this plan development zone to kind of speak to the parks and trails, not so much the parks and trails, but speaks to the open space natural areas that, may end up getting folded into our bailiwick. So, yeah.
Well, and I'm not sure how much of this is some questions for Kelly regarding, because I don't know, or maybe Don, maybe you have some information with your experience with parks, how much of this stuff falls into legalities and what you can and can't put with your zones.
Yeah, that's a definite Kelly question, but
yeah, because I truly I don't know some of this. Obviously I'm not a planner or an attorney, so I think some of that, Kathleen, is and I don't want to throw things at Kelly necessarily, but are probably some great questions that you guys, it sounds like, want answered. And I think between him and maybe the city attorney, or maybe the two people that can answer some of that.
Well, I think the other question I would have is along with that is, when we complete the master plan, will it be adopted into the city's comp plan?
That'll be up to council.
It will have to be. Yeah, it has to be adopted into the comp plan.
Well, I would assume so, yeah, right? Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be.
I don't know if it has to be, but I think
it should be.
Council, yeah.
It should be. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I think if it's not, we end up, it's ripe for appeal, or people,
yes,
for the kind of stuff that's Bailey Meadows brought up.
Yes.
I think my concern is that while we're all talking to this, sending it over to Kelly, having the attorney look at it, having the council consider it, there could be a proposed, basically, ghetto, high density ghetto that passes the criteria, is grandfathered in, and that's what happens. Now we have, a development that's basically a ghetto in Sandy.
Well, but we're not talking parks now. We're
no.
into something else.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of call a little bit process there. I think we're going to focus on the parks and the trails and the open space.
Yeah.
I think that, when we get into this other stuff, it's kind of outside our bailiwick, and we need to kind of stay in our lane. But I think also, and to respond a little bit, when they developed that parks and trails, parks, open space, whatever zone, it was kind of to deal with the Sandy River Park, and also to all our existing parks. And when they did that, I kind of brought up, like, well, what are the, what's the, minimum setbacks and all the other stuff, like what you have, all the code stuff that you have with all your other zones. And they all told me, oh, we're going to develop that. We just don't have time to do it now.
Right.
And so that's like 3 years ago. And I get that they're so busy and all that. I appreciate that. But I guess one of the things that I think we can do as a parks board is maybe just look at some other zone, park zone language requirements in other cities, and just, kind of, copy and paste some of that stuff. And to Kelly to say, here's what we've kind of come up with that other folks are doing. We can discuss it amongst ourselves and see what we like, what we don't like, and then kind of, give that to Kelly to say, here's kind of, some canned stuff that you could easily incorporate into the plan. And that's true of the planned unit developments too, Makoto, that, you know, are there some existing, I guess, you know, I kind of put it on you, you know, to spend a little time looking at other cities' planned development code language to see what do they do with parks and open space. What do they require, you know, do they let them give you all the wet, steep stuff, or do they have a, you know, a percentage that they require? What's the language on that? So, you know, I think there's just some legwork that we could be doing to kind of help provide some options for Kelly, and then by default, then that gets, you know, presented, you know, Kelly can kind of decide what to take to the Planning Commission and City Council. Because it is a low priority. I mean, I don't think it's a low priority, but he's got so much other stuff going on that this kind of falls down to the bottom of the list, but it's important for us to kind of, you know, to deal with. I'll shut up.
Okay, I just sent an email to the planning director for Oregon City asking if we have a specific zoning. So we'll see if Oregon City does, I'll pass it along to him.
I mean, is it even worth our trouble to, you know, I know you don't speak for all of council, and you probably can't share the general gist of things, but I mean, does council want, you know, more affordable housing in ghettos in Sandy, or would they rather keep it nicer and higher end, basically?
Hey, Makoto, let's kind of cut the ghetto talk, okay?
Okay. Well,
Okay.
high density, low income, then.
I can't speak on behalf of council for that.
Yeah.
You know.
Right, that's kind of like asking somebody if they finally quit beating their wife. I mean, it's
begging the question, yeah.
Right. So I think that, you know, Kathleen's right. We got to kind of stay in our lane a little bit, and really our issue with it's not the issue that PUDs exist. It's the issue that we don't have any authority or any negotiating power in dealing with PUDs. I don't think we can make them go away, but if we can make them work for us and with us, it would be a lot more acceptable to us. My perspective.
You can make them go away. They would just have to ask for an exemption. Each individual developer proposing a plan would have to ask for an exemption from certain rules.
Right. We have the rules written in there. Apparently they're not strong enough. So rather than asking for an exemption, they just ignore them.
And if they weren't there, then they would have to ask for an exemption to make them.
Well, I think it's, you know, the sooner we can kind of take a look at just some of the other towns around here, they all seem to have planned developments. So if we can kind of come up with, you know, just take a look at what their code language is on this issue, that would be, you know, something to bring to our next month's meeting to say, here's what everybody else is doing. And then we know, you know, then we know what our kind of decision space is, I think. Because I think maybe, you know, we're not the first ones to see this, and, you know, maybe somebody else has solved this or at least has some suggestions for us. Okay, well, I'm going to move us on to the Parks Master Plan. The summary there is, I don't know, it's about 10 or 12 pages. If you haven't read it, it does have a good summary of what all's taken place with our Parks and Trails Master Plan. It summarizes both the surveys that were done and then the open house that was done. Trails are a big priority. There seemed to be a little bit of a different take on whether or not it was the open house versus the surveys. I think there was a little bit, the playgrounds and things like that were more for the, oh my God, there's a big, huge spider here in my office. Hold on.
It's a pesticide.
There's some Roundup when you need it. I usually catch them and let them go, but anyway, excuse me. Okay, so yeah, anyways, it was a good good overview of things. The next steps are to the longest day parkway has kind of been canceled by necessity. So we're going to look at different options of how to reach out. People still, there was the question of just kind of doing some sort of virtual, Zoom type kind of a interactive workshop online, including a survey. And that's certainly something that's going to be probably done, but there was also a desire to kind of get, a lot of folks don't do online, they're even worse than me when it comes to Zoom or whatever. And so it's just important to also kind of do that reach out, especially with the Hispanic community. They don't do the online stuff so much. And so it's really important. And so they're trying to figure out how they can do social distancing, maybe some sort of interpersonal stuff where you're actually there talking, but maybe they, have it at different times or something like that, so that folks can kind of get their, be more in person. Is that kind of what you got from it, Don and Lori?
Go ahead, Don.
I agree with what you said. I had a little bit of, I don't know, breaking up or interference, so it came through a little choppy to me. But I think one of the things that they talked about is one of the team members is a communications expert, if you will. That's kind of her bailiwick. And while she wasn't in the last meeting, they were going to go back to her and kind of ask for a little bit more specific recommendations on how to seek out more information from people. At least that's what I remember hearing.
Yeah.
I think there's just a general disappointment about the timing. Nobody's fault, just what happened. But I think there's, looks like we made some great progress right off the bat with the open house, got some good feedback with the second group. And then all of a sudden, our big show, if you will, that we were going to kind of piggyback onto the longest day bike ride, got wrecked. And so it kind of threw a big monkey wrench into our plans.
I think also there was, we kind of already have a good handle on, what people want as far as, trails or this or that.
Yeah.
At this point, we're really wanting to focus a little bit in on, zooming in, getting the folks like at the Deer Point neighborhood to kind of zoom in on, we've asked these consultants to do kind of more park-specific master plan for Champion Way, Deer Point, and the community center and stuff. And so really kind of having them zoom in on some more options for what they want to see at those parks with a lot more specifics. So, and so
the other thing that I really liked about it too is I thought they did a really nice job of looking beyond existing city boundaries, looking into the, urban growth boundary, urban reserve kind of areas, and recognizing that, it might be 20 years down the line, but if you don't plan for it now, you're not going to get it then. And so it was good and helpful, I think, to have that conversation. And that kind of bleeds over, in some areas it was bleeding over into inside city limits, underserved areas too. And recognizing it might be a number of years before we can service those areas. And that we're going to have to go outside the existing city boundaries, but within the urban growth boundary to achieve that. And I think that that's a good forethought moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's important that we.
Yeah, they had some really good ideas about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I think it's really important that we do reach out to Deer Point and Champion Way and find some way to get direct input from them. And I think we can do that. I think we'll be able to have some social distance in-person type of opportunity to do that. Because I think that I'm sitting here in Deer Point right now, but not saying that because this is my neighborhood, but I just know that group of people would really like the opportunity to speak specifically about the park that's going in their neighborhood.
They had
I
a good,
agree.
they had a good summary of kind of where we are with what's called level of service. And, you know, what we do have in abundance is kind of this, you know, open space, natural area type park with the Sandy River Park, and also with the part of the community campus that's over the hillside, and it's just forested. So we did, excuse me, they are kind of being able to kind of identify how much actual developed parkland that can be used for ball, you know, for playgrounds and, you know, kicking a ball around and things like that. And then where those missing spots are in the city existing, and then also looking at where should it be spaced, you know, sort of like we did with our process. You know, they kind of basically used a lot of what we did, but just looked at what kind of spacing should we have in the future for parks. You know, they made a recommendation for how many more neighborhood parks. You know, they made, I think, two or three more pocket parks or tot lot type things, but mostly neighborhood parks, and then community parks, a couple community parks. So yeah, it's great to take a look at the documentation they have, and if you want any more information on it, then let us know. They gave out a lot more paperwork than just what was in this packet, but it's they're doing a great job, and it's really, you know, it's kind of fun to see it churning along and really coming to fruition finally. So I'm thrilled. So
Yeah.
Except for the public outreach aspect, but we'll get there. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I am thoughtless.
We're all thought it out.
All right, well, I hope they open the dog park this week. I guess I'd like to, you know,
Yeah,
I know that's gonna be popular, so.
I'm gonna work on that tomorrow, get just some, you know, absolute confirmation from Jordan, and then I'll work on some signage just in-house that I can easily tack up, and then find out if I should roll that out on social media. But there may be a few more steps. I don't know if they'll be ready Friday, but we'll try.
All right, if there's anything we can do to help, let us know.
Okay. Might help me
Any other,
signs.
yeah, I can help do that. Any other thoughts for the good of the order? Our next, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was
I
just
thought we were
gonna,
gonna,
sorry, go ahead, Don.
I was gonna say, I think we were gonna get an update on the garden repairs,
Yeah.
and there was something else.
So,
June board elections.
right, okay, so the repairs are in progress at the garden, but going very slowly. I had tried to email you all some pictures that I took the other day, but I wasn't able to get them off my phone and onto my email for some reason, so I'll keep trying. But Neil is, you know, I think he's doing the best he can under the circumstances, and under, you know, with what's going on, I think things are moving a little slower, but he has a pretty good process now, and hopefully we'll start to see things going forward. We did get some part of the funds from the park maintenance budget approved, so that helps. And we'll get as many done as we can this year. I'm gonna go over and weed whack the inside of the community garden one of these days, because I think I have a battery operated weed whacker, and somebody called today, asked if somebody could do that, so I thought I'll just run over there and do that. It won't take me long. Susan, anything you're noticing over there? I thought it looked all in all pretty good, because all the beds are, the nice thing is all the beds are rented, and I only noticed maybe 3 that hadn't yet been weeded, which is unusual for this time.
Yeah.
Usually there's a few more. And so as people start to plant, it should look even better, but stuff is growing and looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. It's nice to have the trash can inside the gate.
Is it not there right now?
It's inside instead
Okay.
of outside.
Okay.
And then there's the other doggy thing. So I think less doggy stuff ends up in there.
Okay.
And the doggy stuff goes to, I think goes to the dog place. Yeah, I think it's looking pretty
Couple
good.
beds in there
There's
too,
quite
don't
a bit
you?
of soil left over.
I know, I did, I made a note of that. I don't think I need to order as much as I did the last year.
Well, it's hard to tell. Yeah. But so
You have a couple beds in there, don't you?
me,
No,
Or
Dawn.
Dawn, yeah,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We have two, and my daughter and her husband have two.
Okay.
Wow.
Kathleen, has Neil been back in touch with you about sideboards at all? Can you unmute? I do that all the time.
Oh, Lordy. He called me.
Okay.
But I didn't, I just saw it, so I need to call him back. Yeah.
Okay, let me know if I can help.
Yeah, there was also, now that I think about it, a request, and I think I mentioned it to you before about brushing out the Jim Slagle Loop Trail and the possibility of working with the ant farm on doing that under social distancing guidelines and all. And yeah.
Do you want me to mention that to Neil, or do you want to talk to him directly?
I mentioned it to Neil and those guys, and Mike, somebody has already called Mike about it, and so he said something like, well, maybe they could work with Ant Farm on that. And so I told Neil to get a hold of Mike and Joe and those guys and figure something out. And I'm willing to help, be another weed whacker if they want one, and work with a couple kids or whatever. So other than that, the other thing that came up was the viewing binocular things for the viewing telescopes are getting shipped here in the next few days, and will be here. The signs are almost done being fabricated, and will be, I'm gonna go pick those up to save us up on shipping because it's not very far away.
Oh, that's nice.
Telescopes are coming from like Alabama or somewhere like that. So yeah, so we're getting really pretty close to that.
Nice.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And the cameras?
Oh, well, that's a bummer. So I don't know if you maybe didn't hear that they canceled the grants for the tourism grants.
Right.
For this year, for everything, for the whole year.
Right, I did.
So one of the things I kind of was thinking about, of course, I about died when I saw the Travel Oregon folks, the salary for the Travel Oregon guy was like, I don't know, something like $400,000 a year or some ungodly amount of money that guy makes. Well, they have a lot of money, but anyway, I guess they've been having some reductions in staff also. And, but I know that they use Johnswood Viewpoint all the time to market Travel Oregon. And so I'm just wondering if that's something to kind of see if they might be willing to throw a little bit of money at it. We'll see. So yeah, kind of dialing for dollars, dried up on the one front. So we got to go dial for dollars somewhere else and try to make that happen.
The other thing I'm hearing is that the local government grants through state parks is not looking very good right now either.
Yeah, everybody's pulling back.
Well, nobody's playing the lottery right now. All the bars are closed.
Right.
So
There it is, right there.
Yep. Yep. So, okay. Well, is there any other topics? I didn't mean to cut us off. I kind of forgot about the garden and all. I apologize.
We do have the elections next month. So according to the bylaws and the last meeting before the end of the fiscal year. And, the board is supposed to have 3 officers, the chairperson, the vice chair, and the secretary. And I think I said in that email, we had discussed, I can continue to do the minutes, but it would be great to have somebody willing to look over the draft minutes and kind of help refine them. But I just wanted to mention that, in the bylaws, it says that we have those 3 officers. And so we'll hold elections next month. So talk amongst yourselves. I think it just requires a nomination and then a vote. And then we can do that at the end of the meeting next month. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Next
Thanks.
meeting is on the 10th.
Is that the second Wednesday?
Yeah.
Lori, do you have your work schedule for June? Lori, do you have your,
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say we're gonna be meeting like this.
no, I meant your work schedule.
I have a work schedule.
Do you work on June 10th or whatever the second Wednesday is in June?
I believe, I can look right now. It doesn't matter. I'll still attend if I'm at work if we're doing them via Zoom.
Okay.
But I'm off that day, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for checking, though.
Yeah, well, we were going to try, one of the things in those past minutes is that you were going to send me sort of your 12-month schedule. And then,
Right. Well, I haven't been worried about it since we're meeting this way because
okay.
I can do this even from work. I've been doing city council meetings like
Okay.
this. If we get a call, you'll just see me get up and walk away. So.
All right. We'll worry about that later then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody. Y'all bring such great energy to these meetings, and I appreciate all your comments and interests. And yep, I think it's going to be, make some real progress here. So I appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks. Take care.
Good
See
night.
you guys.
Hey, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Oh.